Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Boy, am I excited for this guest. Before I introduce them, here's a quote just for this episode. Action may not always bring happiness, but there is no happiness without action. William James, my dear friend, who's graced us with their presence before, who's leaned in to the more difficult conversations, who exemplifies courage and empathy in their leadership. He's an author. He's a leader. He's an entrepreneur. He's a responsible manager, divisional president, Homecomings Mortgage, podcaster extraordinaire. I've been on the show. We're laughing, we're loving, we're having fun. I love being on the show. Fobby Naghmi, rock star, plays instruments. He does it all, really. And today we're going to learn about culture. We're going to learn about leadership. We're going to learn about opportunities in the marketplace as it relates to his business. Thank you for coming back on the Culture Matters podcast. And if you're listening, scroll through the list and the list of episodes, because Fobby's been on many times at this point if you're listening. Thanks for coming on.
Listen, man, I don't even think I mean, I was thinking about this last time when you were on my show. I forget that we're recording and we're just talking. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I don't understand the difference anymore, Jay. And I think maybe, I know, and I mean no offense to anybody else that's been on my show. I really don't. We've had some amazing people, right?
Oh, yeah.
But with you, it's like a conversation. It's just a conversation between two guys who seems to be seeking the same outcome in life. And so I don't feel like, I got to be somebody and sometimes you go on people's podcasts and you're always just like waiting for the next question. And here's just a conversation. So it's my honor to be here, man. I've, you know me, man. My love for you is always public and endearing.
Thank you.
By the way, William James, you quoted him, and I think there
Yes.
was something that is so amazing that William James did. He was one of the first human beings on the planet that said something like this. I'm not as good as you as quoting, so I use the word paraphrasing, but he said, we believed that our emotions dictated our actions, when in fact, our actions will dictate our emotions.
Wow, wow, wow.
And so, kind of like what you were saying already with that quote, you know what I mean? So William James was amazing with this breakthrough philosophy. And it's just when you really begin to understand that, it's like, we used to think like if I'm feeling sad, that I should lay around and eat bonbons and like binge watch Breaking Bad. And what he says is, no, no, if you're feeling bad, take your dog for a walk, call your friend Jay Doran, do the actions, and then all of a sudden you find out that you're not feeling bad anymore.
Hell yeah.
It's just so simple, right? It's so simple, but yet it took till William James connected the dots for us.
I'd like you to connect some of the dots for us. What actions are going to lead to these outcomes, these constructive, positive outcomes in a market like this for the originator? And you could take it beyond to the salesperson because you're a leader of
No,
sales.
let's keep it with the loan originator because that's what I
Okay.
specialize in, right? I mean, in a few weeks it'll be 30 years for me, man. On January 3rd, 30 years in the mortgage business.
How did you start when you were 7? You really look
So
young.
here's the thing. I was selling lemonade and I said, "Hey, do you need a home equity line against that house to pay for the lemonade?"
Now that's good. That's a pitch.
So it'll be 30 years on January 3rd, 2024, man. I mean, and I had no idea I was gonna be in the business 30 years. I mean, when you walk in the door on January 3rd, 1994. And I don't think that the need is any different in 1994 as it was in 2023 or 2024. I don't think the need, we want to work somewhere, right, where we belong. We want to work somewhere where people feel like, hey, listen, I mean, it's not perfect, but I can talk to somebody and they're going to give me an answer that is reasonable. and that we will be able to work towards a goal together. It's not just me. The worst thing that I hated, I don't know how to mention companies' names that I was at, but is when this one guy came up to me, and I guess he had just learned this word. You know what I mean? I don't know what it was, but he wanted me to identify my quote unquote value proposition to him.
Your value prop. Okay.
And I knew that this gentleman had never originated a loan in his entire life. So how could I explain to him what my value proposition is? You know what I mean? When he had no clue what his own value proposition was. His entire value proposition was kissing someone's ass so they wouldn't fire him. And salespeople we're out here in the front line. I mean, I know that feeling, Jay, when you need to close that loan, if you don't close that loan, a certain bill is not going to get paid. That's a real feeling. And how do you quantify that into a value proposition? I mean, come on, I can't do that. That's silly.
Hmm.
So to your answer your question in a very long-winded way, you know what I mean? I think loan officers, they want to feel like the person that they're working with is shoulder to shoulder,
Mm.
not someone that they're falling behind of, or that someone is like, one of the things that we're really cognizant of right now with our current sales team is realizing that industry wide, it is a very bleak winter we're staring at. And so rather than, making my guys feel bad, what can I do? How can I make them feel? I don't want them to feel good about being mediocre, but I do want them to see reality that, hey, this is not you, this is industry. There are people who are winning. Here's some strategies we're finding that are winning. Let's do these strategies. And then I get these success stories where someone says, hey, Fob, guess what? I did what you told me to, and I got 4 loan apps out of it.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah. You know what I mean? That's when we know we're doing the right thing, Jay. And that's the kind of company that I want to build.
The shoulder to shoulder.
Hmm.
What does that look like? How do we make that visceral for the audience?
Yeah. So, I mean, to shoulder kind of goes back to what I've already said is for me, it's really important to be part of a group of leaders that originated loans. It really is. It really is. You know what I mean? Because to me, it's like I know that they feel the pain. They feel the pain of a high interest rate, no inventory market, I mean, and it makes you go back to your old, okay, what do we do? Like a bunch of us, we grew up in 1994. I grew up doing cash out refinances. It's amazing how many loan officers who got in the business, let's say the last 5 to 8 years, have never done a cash out refinance. So they don't know. They're looking at this rate and saying, Fob, this guy's rate is 3.5%. Like, yeah, I get that. But let's take a look at all the liabilities he has with the credit cards, add the mortgage payment. Even with the rate of 7.5, the gentleman yesterday was saving like $680 a month.
Of
Now
their
that's
overall wealth
right.
to their personal life.
Right. So those are strategies that we're able to share because, and that to me is how you'd stand shoulder to shoulder. We're sharing our experiences with them, not some theoretical stuff I read in Housing Wire.
That's over 8,000 a year that person is not coming out of their life, but going in
Right.
it because the loan originator, what? They knew more, they did more effort. Which one is it? Or is it
They were able to be an advisor, not a salesperson. They were able to give financial advice based on the information they were seeing, right? And here's the other thing, Jay. You could actually take that $8,000 and you can apply that savings back to your mortgage payment. So now you're going to pay off your house sooner.
what kind of effect does that have on someone?
Not knowing all the amortizations, I
I
mean
mean,
the
crazy
years.
math, but it's got to
Yeah, I
be
mean, in my
helpful
in my head, I think you're saying about 4 to 6 years.
off the mortgage rate, rough.
Yeah,
That's a lot.
it is.
Well, it sounds like a
It's
lot, but is it a lot?
Of course it is because I mean I know like if you do like 13 payments a month or a year, you know what I mean, instead of 12 payments, that takes it down to a pretty good number, like clips off a few years, right? So keeping that same philosophy, I don't think that the guy's payment was $8,000 a month. So it was like maybe 3,000 a month. So that's, works out to about whatever that three payments a year, right?
Okay.
You're going to knock off 4 to 6 years that way. But see, giving that advice to people, right? And then telling them, saying, our new strategy has been telling people, look, 4%, 3.5% is cool, but 21%, 26% on your credit card is not cool. So let's take a look. Let's take a look. What can we do for you? You know what I mean? How can we help? Can we help? I think having leadership with that open mind that we've been through these years before. Obviously, I will tell you that I think 2023 has been a very unique year in the way that the market has slowed down. It's not something that we've ever seen, quite honestly. But, have we dealt with higher rates? Have we dealt with, people not wanting to refinance and being shown a good reason to refinance? And then you also have to look at the other part of it because this is a two-step strategy, Jane. I think you'll appreciate this because I know the way your mind works. If we're able to move people out of these 3.5%, 4% rates into 7.5% rates, well, they're more likely and open-minded to sell their house in the future.
Hmm.
So we got to create inventory. Because right now, I mean, our good friend Barry Habib is out there talking about how low the inventory is, right? We're about 475,000 nationwide or something like that, right? 2009, in proper perspective, we had 4 million listings nationwide. So when you are almost like percentages of that number today,
Wow.
I mean, that's an impact that is felt across all levels.
How?
Well, because when you don't have that mobility, the first time home buyer is landlocked today because we basically gave them a rate of say 3.5%. So they don't want to sell their house, meaning the guy who's been renting for the last 5 years can't buy that first time home that they can afford, right? The guy who's above the first time home buyer that wants maybe think about moving, when he puts their house in the market, they don't know if it's going to sell or not sell. There are houses in Augusta, Georgia, I found out last week that are sitting on the market for 75 days.
Wow.
So everyone thinks, oh my God, it's still a seller's market. Blah, blah. It's not. In a certain price range, that second level home, the third level home, they're stuck because that first time home buyer doesn't want to take that chance. So we got to figure out a way that works. And I explained this to somebody the other day. I said, imagine a high school system where a percentage of the 12th graders no longer could pass. So you have all this movement coming from kindergarten up, but there's no room in the 12th grade anymore because a certain percent, and sooner or later it's going to get clogged. And it makes everybody else now in the county says, hey, instead of 60 being passing, we need to make 70 passing. So that everybody else gets slowed down and stuck, right?
Yeah.
And that's literally what we're doing in the housing market right now.
What could be the ramifications of that over time?
We're seeing it actually, Jay. We're seeing it. Where people are not don't want to sell their house, right? They're afraid to put their house in the market, right? They don't know what's going to happen. I think when the rates start to go down, it's going to be a real cluster because the demand will go up instantly, right? Once we hit that 6.5% rate, I think the demand will spike. Um, I don't know the answer. I think there's a lot of solutions being thrown around. A lot of it revolves around allowing maybe suspending capital gain taxes so that a certain amount of investors will be, what I mean, motivated to put their investment properties up for sale. I think that's a really good, viable solution that the government could be looking at, should be looking at. But the ramifications are basically people don't feel comfortable to look at even buying a house. And so landlords can continue increasing rents. And overall, when you have a more of a landlord type economy and not a home ownership economy, then we can clearly look at Europe and see what happens over there.
We all get poorer.
Yeah, yeah, because and I know that the majority of wealth comes from some kind of property ownership. and generational wealth is then transferred in that manner.
Do you think that there's a deep purpose in being a mortgage advisor, broker,
Is
loan,
there a deep purpose?
like a
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, look,
it's the first thing
I
that comes to
think that
mind. It seems like that would be a purpose driven
I
market
think
in a
if you're going
sense.
to
Like,
think if you're going to be in any business, Jay, and this goes back to culture matters, right? I think if you're going to be in any business for a long period of time, and it's no longer a paycheck, it's more about the career. You know what I mean? And then
mm,
once it stops being a career, then it becomes a something greater, right? And I'll tell you a story that really jarred my mind when I was in my third year, because I think I had my first private office in that building, right? Because in those days, getting a private office was a big thing, Jay. We had to go to
yeah,
the office and copy machines and fax machines and that kind of stuff, right? I'll never forget. It was like the end of the month, Jay, and I was just trying to meet my numbers. You know what I mean? And I was on track and blah blah blah. And the borrower comes in with their conditions to satisfy the loan. He's got his kids with him, or this one kid, and I'm running around reviewing all the stuff, and I got to go make copies of these documents, right? So I can give it to the underwriter in the morning. I'm walking out the door, and this little like 8, 9 year old kid says this to me, Jay. Mr. Nagmi, does this mean I get my own bedroom?
wow.
I mean, I don't tell that story too. You know what I mean? I tell every now and then. I don't tell it too because I just I get I it's. And I was walking to the copy machine, right? And I'm just like, just this little kid's voice is going on in my head now. He doesn't care what level, like out of 32 loan officers, Fobby Naghmi is going to be at. Is Fobby going to be number four? Or Fobby's going to be number seven? This kid just wants his own bedroom. He doesn't want to share the bedroom with his sister or brother or whatever. He wants his privacy.
Wow.
And that's when I realized what I was doing, what I was part of. Plus, he was now going to see his father buy a house. So now in his DNA, he knew home ownership was something that he also wanted.
Wow.
So we were creating something generational now. So this was not about me making my 1.5 points off of this guy's transaction any longer. And it's been what, 27 years since that happened, and I still can see the kid. So if you really want to know how I feel about this business, that's how I feel about this business.
When you share that to your team, what are they?
So it's very sad. I don't think I've ever shared that with my team, but you know what? I will. On January 18th, we're going to be having our kickoff summit for 2024,
Amazing.
and I will be sure to share that because I think I've only shared it once before with Lauren Brandeo,
She's great. Shout out to Laura.
and I also wrote an article about it one time in one of the magazines, but I've never shared it with the team, and I think I will this time.
Why?
I think it's important, especially with what we're going through, to make people understand that this is not about a paycheck. And this is not about units. Yes, we're here to make money. We're a capitalistic driven profit engine. We get it. You know what I mean?
So
But it has to be if you're going to sustain this with ethic and with love and with care, then it's got to be more than just a paycheck.
hmm, what regimen, practical regimen, day in, day out? When are we taking time for rest, for put the oxygen mask on ourselves in a time that's less where we're reacting and we have to be more proactive? What regimen is working for you?
Yeah, so I'm an early riser. I get up like 4:30, pretty much 7 days a week. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Like sleeping in for me is 5 a.m. I know. But to do that, I normally in bed by like say 9:15 to 9:45. I'm sleeping. Shout out to Joe Panabianco. I don't want to be a name dropper, but Joe was the one who convinced me to start sleeping 7 hours a night.
Really?
And yeah, he was like, Fob, you got to watch what happens to your life once you start getting 7 hours. And so I started doing that, and it really it changed my life. Um, So for me, my morning regimen is very, that's my time. I mean, my from 4:30 to about 7 p.m. is like literally whatever I want to do with my life is happening right there and then. And so I focus on three things, Jay. I focus on mind, body, and soul. So there's meditation, there's prayer, there's working out, there is yoga, you know what I mean? There is all sorts of things that I may do from 4:30 to 7 a.m. But those are all for me so I can stay grounded once that day starts and the gun goes off for the day.
When the gun goes off, where are we racing?
I don't know where we're racing. I mean, I never that's the weirdest thing is like I really do have come to believe what Jim Rome said. And I mean, when I first heard it, I thought it was a crock of crap, right? I really do believe that it's like he said, I think his mentor told him, earn $1 million, but don't do it for the $1 million. Do it for all the things you're going to learn on how to earn $1 million.
Hmm.
And basically, I mean, what we today talk about that it's not the end, but it's the journey. That's basically what he was saying. All the things we're going to learn on the journey together, all the people we get to meet, all the conversations we get to have. So I mean, if I think if I was predestined or pre-planned I mean, look, we all have our business plans, we all have our goals. I mean, I tend to every year it's interesting. My goals become more focused and they become less. Like it used to be this laundry list of things I wanted to accomplish. And it's not like I don't want to have a laundry list, but one of the things I've learned about goal setting, and I think it's important as we're going into the end of the year, a lot of people are doing this, is I don't like to burden myself with too much anymore. I rather find two or three things that I think are more cornerstones. That if I can accomplish these two or three things, then the waterfall from those accomplishments will be almost significant enough that if I had done all 78 goals.
Hmm.
So I think for me, that's more of the way I kind of focus my energy.
How important is that first 4 hours of the day after the, in a sense, I'm thinking, I don't mean the first 4 hours. Let's say you get up very early and you're working on your mind, your body, your spirit. The first 4 hours of, as William James would put it, the action in the battle. Like, how do you look at those first 4 hours in the
You
office
know,
or in the
the
rhythm
actual
of
work
the
of the
day?
work when the work starts off.
Yeah, like,
Yeah, I think it's really important to for me, right? I want to make sure that anybody that needed something from me has either been responded to or is about to be responded to. I don't want them to feel like I let something slide.
why?
And that's really critical. Because once again, it goes back to shoulder to shoulder. You know what I mean? If I'm standing shoulder to shoulder with somebody, that means that, and I like the way you always talk about this, the ability to respond is
Hmm.
my responsibility, right? And so I need to make sure that their emails, their texts, whatever question they had, sometimes, Jay, it's it's me forwarding their email and copying them on it to somebody else that can handle their question. But guess what happens when they look at their email when they wake up? Because I know they're not awake at 6:30 or 7 whenever I start doing my, you know what I mean? They know Fabi took care of their problem. It's either I give them the answer or we're working together to get the answer together.
They know Bobby took care of their problem.
Yeah.
Why is that important to know?
Because it takes a little bit of anxiety away from a salesperson's life that's counting on commission to survive. It's as simple as that. I mean, we need a paycheck. Anyone who says compensation is not important, I wonder about them. It's like, okay, I get the altruistic view behind that statement, but can we really peel that banana and understand that I'm not coming here to work 12 hours a day, be away from my wife and kids, and not get paid? I mean,
It's funny because why is it so funny, right? Why is that funny?
but I mean, people say that all the time. Oh, money's not that important, and this and I get it. There are things that are way more important, and I had a very great mentor. He's gone on to the next part of his journey in his life, or whatever, right? And he said to me, he said, Fabi, if money will solve your problems, you don't have any problems, right? So I get the whole concept of money and all that stuff. I really do. But I also give it the credit that it deserves because we
Mm.
have to have a certain amount of capital in order to provide sustenance in the 21st century.
I'm very glad we've cleared that up today on the Culture Matters book. No,
Well,
it's sad that we have to because why is it sad? You know, yes. How do we pay our people? How do we make them strong in
yeah.
like this?
I mean, the worst thing that happens, right, is a leader doesn't understand that their loan officer or salesperson, whatever, right, that their loan officer is behind 2 months on their car payment, right? And the amount of anxiety that that loan officer is going through is just crushing them. And too often we fail as leaders to be empathetic.
Ooh, say that louder for in the back.
Yeah, I mean, I think once is enough. I think if they don't hear it, then they should hit rewind.
Oh man, I want to say something. A leader doesn't understand their loan officer is 2 months behind their car payment. I would argue that psychologically, being behind on something increases the likelihood of self-deceit because you have to figure out a way to compartmentalize that. And that doesn't lead to more shareholder value. It's like we're setting people
Mm.
up for failure. So can you elaborate on that? You're
Well, I mean, I think you're way more. I don't know how to describe you, Jay, but you're just way intelligent than I am, more intelligent than I am, and
Why
it's
did
okay.
you say
It's no big
that?
deal. I mean, you see things in a different way, and so sometimes for me, I try to simplify things down to the basic core.
Well,
And
Einstein
the
would
way
say that's genius. So, like, where I'm asking is in your lived experience as someone that's in shoulder to shoulder with your people, right? How would you unpack that for the person listening?
I
How to
think
actually build that bridge of empathy. I guess that's where I'm trying to get from you.
I think you have to have lived it. Like I know what it's like to have the repossession company send a tow truck. You know what I mean, knocking on my door. I remember that in 2008, 2009. I know that moment of like being freaked out that my daughter and her friend were at a movie theater. If this guy literally took my cars right now, I wouldn't have a way to pick them up. So how do you build that empathy and how do you build that bridge? I don't think that you can, but I know I was there. So when one of my loan officers is telling me stuff like that, my heart is melting for them. And
Hmm.
anything that I can do, you know, that is legal and compliant, I'm going to bend over backwards and whatever I got to do it, I'm going to make sure it happens, But at the same time, I don't think that you can just build a bridge of empathy. We can have compassion and we can even have a sense of companionship, fellowship with the other individual. But until that tow truck guy is knocking on your front door to take your cars, and you're trying to convince him, dude, I don't know what's going on. Like, I thought I had worked a deal out with the bank. That's something that you just got to go through. And I hope no one goes through it, by the way, because but when you do, you never forget. At least I don't ever want to forget. Let me say that. I don't want to forget it. I don't ever want to get that well financially that I forget that I was that close to just falling off the edge of this world.
So let's say what what are what are some of the elements that are going to keep us from packing it in early? in the sense that there's less coming to us day in, day out. Example, after the show, I'm going to make some hot calls with a friend, reaching out to people. They've raised their hand, so it's not super random.
Mhm.
But that, today's Saturday, you didn't have to make time to have this conversation with me to record on a Saturday. So, it's 4:45 on a Tuesday. Someone's listening to this in their office. Their phone's not ringing. How do they not pack it in?
Yeah. So Og Mandino said it perfectly, right? And I just love when I heard it, and this is something I practiced in 2008, 2000 through 2000. I mean, such something I just did, right? Is I refused to leave the office until I had a win.
I refused to leave the office until I had a win.
Yeah. Now, here's a cool thing, Jay. Tony Robbins had taught me in 2000 or 1998 that I defined what my win was. So it's not the win that Jay Doran has. It's not the win that my boss has. It might be somebody saying no to me. I might look at a no as a win because I know that there's only a certain amount of no's that I'm going to hear before I hear somebody say yes.
What's the key to it so I'm not tricking myself into packing it in? You seem like a super self-aware guy. So I want
Yeah, I
maybe we could speak to the less aware.
I think it's just knowing that how do I say this, man? You cannot quit if no matter how bad the business is today, no matter what we're going through today, it's not going to be forever. I have to explain myself that, right? There are natural laws in this world, Jay. And I remember it hit me one time so hard. The waves were coming in and the waves were going out, right? And no matter what happens, that cycle is going to continue. And so we're just always going through cycles. So whatever cycles is, it's going to pass. Which means, by the way, bad times will pass. But Jay, guess what? Good times will also pass. Right? So it's equal. It's equal. The way this universe is lined up, it's equal, right? Prior to 2008, I refused to let my good times pass. Now, I want
Mm.
to fast forward to your question. The guy sitting at 4:45 in the afternoon, right? You got to know this is not going to be forever. It's not going to be forever. It's going to be this moment that it's passing. It's like the wave coming in. Sooner or later, the wave's going to go back out again, right? So, do we want to be sitting in our like virus infected brain that says there's nothing positive out there, right? Or do I want to leave the office today with the win? Especially Jay, since we're letting them define their win. I have this thing with one manager right now. All he's got to do, right? All he's got to do, Jay, is this. It's so easy. He's got to talk to 3 loan officers that don't work with him every single day, 3 days a week.
3.
That's it. And Jay, here's the win for him. They can simply say, "Hey, Jay, I'm not interested today. Thanks." I call that a win. So what happens? We're making winning easy. We don't have to make it hard. You know what I mean? The point is let's define the wins by the market that we're in. If the rates were 2.5%, and my guy was closing 2 loans a month, I would kick him in his ass. But they're not 2.5%, right? They're 7.7. And so it's a little bit different market. So if he's doing 2 loans a month, 1 loan, I'm okay with that. We have to understand, we just have to adjust. Think about like a sailboat. What if we just left the sails in one direction on a sailboat? Well, if the wind blows north, great, but if it blows south, we're just going to sit here, Jane, stare at each other.
Mm.
We're going to go the other way or backwards. right? So I mean, it's it's like these patterns in life, man. It's nature, and we just have to look at nature and bring it back into our office at 4:45 in the afternoon,
Mm.
and say, okay, this is the way nature is. I mean, think about this. The leaves are turning colors. The leaves are changing. So why do we think the universe doesn't want Fabi to change?
Do you think that do you think that the that people can have can people be proud of what they do in this time?
If they choose to.
What do you what do you mean?
I always think of choices, and I've been saying this forever, right? And we can choose to be happy or we can choose to be sad. Obviously, there are some mental illnesses and some chemical imbalances that can have in certain people problems to have that simple statement. If you're not one of those people, it is now our choice. And it goes back to William James, by the way, right? We can choose happiness, right? We can choose to be happy about our what we're doing today. We can choose to be, successful in our mind, right? The brain is a very powerful tool that we just don't realize. I forgot who said it, Jay, but they said we have spent 1,000,000 years training our brain, and today our brain has become our worst enemy
Mm.
rather than having the brain become our friend, right? So we are constantly listening to our brain like, oh my God, I'm not as good as Fabi. I'm not as good as Jay.
Yeah.
I'm not this. I'm not, I mean, and so we're constantly listening to that. And we have to retool it. And that's why my morning routine is so special for me, right? Been doing it for several years that way, where I need to train it so that it sees the positives. It sees the thing that it is. I mean, we can go down this rabbit hole for a second. I don't mind. So Steve Scalen wrote a book called Still the Lizard. I think we've talked about this before, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And in it, it talks. It's so interesting when you actually break it down, right? It's like we still have this little microbe of a caveman inside of us, right? And that microbe is always looking for what's wrong in order to survive. It has no idea that Fabi's living 20 minutes south of Washington, D.C. with a refrigerator full of food that's going to be fresh, right? In fact, two refrigerators. We have one, my wife, has two refrigerators in here, right? One in the kitchen and one in the garage, right? So we have two refrigerators by the blessing of God to have food in the house. We have a stove that with gas. We have all this microwave and air fryer technology, so we don't need to preserve our fire, right? The caveman inside of me doesn't understand that, and it needs to do something. And so what happens when it's relaxed? It goes on this bender, Jay, and it gets distracted and it becomes unnerved because things. Have you ever heard somebody say, Jay, things are too serene? It's making me uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
It's not a funny statement. It's literally something inside of them. The caveman is trying to get them disturbed. That's why you and I, anybody on the planet, it's always easier to find the negative than it is a positive. I just did a talk about this, Jay, the other week where I told them, and I said, I didn't realize this, that it's so easy for me to break a good habit than break a bad habit, right? And then
Yes.
when I dissected that, I was like, okay, so why is it easy for me to break a good habit? Well, because there's accountability, there is discipline, there is consistency involved in that. It's easy to pick up a cigarette and light it and start smoking. Requires no discipline, requires no consistency.
Mm.
May require a little bit of whatever, but I can do it, right? But I remember quitting cigarettes, man, in 1994, and it was like the worst 6 months of my
Wow.
life.
It's an interesting thought because it is, in a sense, it does it for us. And then the other one, we're doing it.
Yeah. So like if I have to log in my food, like I was logging in my food all last year, right? So I
Yeah.
went from 197 to 171 in weight by logging in my food. Everything I ate, whether I ate a slice of pizza, logged it in. Cheesecake, logged it in,
Huh.
right? Then I slip away from logging in food because I'm like, oh, I know my weights now. I know my calories, blah, 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 right? And sure enough, my weight crept back up again because it's hard to maintain that consistency and discipline of a good habit. Now I'm still making good food choices, but I'm not logging the food in anymore. And so we need to cultivate that positive side of our brain that accepts good habits, that sees positive things that we're doing, that acknowledges our friends and what they're doing good, because that's part of the brain also, by the way. Is cheering for your friends. One of my favorite sayings is that it's very hard to beat me because I want you to win.
Hmm.
Like, how do you beat a guy who's actually wanting you to win?
you, you don't.
Right? It's like, oh, you won. I love that, man. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. I mean, I'm cheering for you.
Hey, what's the for those that are listening, your podcast,
Yeah.
where can they listen to that? And what's it called? So just so we can give it a shout out,
Yeah. So
because
it's called
I've been a
Laugh
recurring
Lend.
guest.
You have, and you always have a seat in my podcast. So
I can't wait.
it's called Laugh, Lend, and Eat, and it is on Spotify, and we have our own landing website, laughlendsandeat.com.
How many episodes
For
you have now that our listeners can take a look? Range, roughly.
I think we're about close to 100.
Wow.
Yeah, we're done recording for the rest of the season because I'm
And their
I'm taking
video.
three video, yeah, on the YouTube channel, Laugh, Lend, and Eat on YouTube.
I
Um,
want to ask real quick about work work commitment in the meaning, do you think that we inherently have to work more in this market, or is it, or not? I guess that would be for, or like, or is
well,
it so much the
let,
quality that's
let's
higher?
unpack that statement for a second. Let's unpack that. Why
Yeah.
would people think when the rates are low that you don't have to work?
Yeah. So that's, why would they? Or do
Yeah,
they? Is that what they think?
because I remember in 2020, 2021, everybody was losing their mind. Fob, I got so much business, I don't know what to do with it. Fob, my operations can't close the business. My underwriters are flooded. My processor is overwhelmed. Blah, blah. You know what I mean? People working around the day and night, day and night, day and night. So once again, the brain. Look, make sure we pay attention to our brain and what the brain is focusing in on, right? So the brain says, oh, well, if the rates are higher, you probably have to work more.
Hmm.
Here's the secret, Jay. And when I discovered this secret, I really blew my mind and really excelled me. So if you want to know one of my nuggets, right? And I
Yes.
don't share this nugget too often. You and I both know you speak a lot. I get to talk a lot, right? Um, I'd say 5% of people who listen to us actually execute our ideas. Some people say it's 2%. I
Sure.
say it's 5%, somewhere in the middle, right? So if there's 100,000 loan officers, right? And only 5% of them are executing. If you're part of that 5%, you're only competing against 5,000 other loan officers because the other 95,000 will never be in your competition. And when I really realized that, Jay, it really emboldened me to be more aggressive in my strategies
Hmm.
and execute more often. You know what I mean? Follow up. So when people say the rates are 8%, oh my God, okay, what are the strategies for an 8% market?
Hmm.
Let's execute those strategies. Is it making calls on a Saturday morning? Is it texting? Is texting the new way to do it? Is it a social media campaign? What is the strategy? How do I get people engaged so that they will use me in my product and my services? That's all it is. So I think we work more when the rates are lower. I think now is the time for strategies and leadership to
Interesting.
provide resources for the sales staff. This one guy said to me, "Oh my God, you're actually giving me ideas." I said, "Listen to me. You're paying my salary through your override.
Hmm.
If I don't help you, then why are you giving me your money?"
You're a piece of garbage. You know that?
Right. I mean, people like my manager won't return my emails for like 72 hours. I said, well, why do you pay him his salary? Why are you giving him your commission? It doesn't make any sense to me. Well, I like the guy. We've been friends for 8 years. I don't think he likes you if he's not returning your phone calls in 2 hours. Well, I trust him. Why do you trust somebody who doesn't respond to you?
So, in closing, I'd like to know for our people that need you right now, they're in the industry and
Sure.
they are either going to leave it or they're going to have a home that supports them.
Right.
Where are you? Who are you? How do they get in contact you? And will you, within 72 hours, right?
I don't take that long, but best way to get a hold of me is LinkedIn. Honestly, that's the best way to get a hold of me. Because I'm always on LinkedIn pretty much 7 days a week. I always respond to messages that I get on LinkedIn, provided that they're not trying to telemarket me for some virtual assistant from Singapore or something like that, right? Um, but that's really the best. Obviously, our website is myhomecomings.com, and there's a link to contact me through email there. You can either go on LinkedIn or on myhomecomings.com, www.myhomecomings.com, and schedule an appointment to set up a 30-minute just, hey, who are you and tell me more about you. I heard you on Jay Doran. Sounded pretty cool, but are you really the same guy when the microphone's not on? And they
Mm,
can be the judge of that.
that'll be part three, my friend. Are you really the same
Ooh.
guy when the microphone's not on?
Oh, that's scary, Jay.